increasing competition to get a place to study law at some of the UK's leading universities, some of them have decided to use the LNAT as a way to distinguish between applicants and whether they deserve an offer or not. This video is about the tips that I'd offer prospective law students about how to put yourself in a good position to do well in the LNAT and hopefully get a place at your ideal university. Nobody, including me, can give you a step-by-step guide about how to pass the LNAT. Because honestly, each test is different, you don't have to learn any specific knowledge, and there isn't a published pass mark. The LNAT is a weird test to prepare for, but with only a few resources, I managed to get 26 out of 42, which was higher than the 21.5 average of my year and enough to get me a place at the University of Durham. The test isn't the hardest thing in the world, but it also isn't the easiest thing. For what it's worth, I know some people who got into Cambridge who didn't do well enough in the LNAT to get an offer at the universities that require it. Now this may all seem quite daunting, but you've done the right thing by going online, looking for some help, and hopefully by the end of the video, you'll feel more in control. So feel free to skip around the video. I've put timestamps in the description for the topics that I'm going to be covering, which are a quick overview, the resources that I use, section A multiple choice, section B essay section, and then ending with my final thoughts. Now you can find all this information on the official LNAT website, which I've linked below. But for those who don't know or who want a little refresher, I'm going to go over the basics of what the LNAT is and what it's asking of you. The LNAT stands for the Law National Aptitude Test, and is exactly that. It's testing your aptitude. According to them, the LNAT is designed to test your intellectual abilities rather than your knowledge of a particular subject. They don't require you to know any specific information about the law. You'll have to take the test if you're planning to do any of these courses from these 9 universities. But make sure to check the list because it may have changed since I made the video. One important fact to remember is that the LNAT is not a barrier to entry to get into university. They take the LNAT as a part of your overall application. For example, Bristol puts 25% weighting on the LNAT as a factor for deciding whether to give you an offer. The test is split into section A and section B, and it lasts 2 hours and 15 minutes without any breaks. Section A has 42 multiple choice questions based on 12 passages, and when the results are sent, you'll see yours and you'll see the average for your year group. After 95 minutes of doing the multiple choice questions, the computer will automatically switch you over to the section B essay section. So make sure that you keep track of the time, maybe bring in a watch with a built-in timer. Now section B is an essay question and you have a choice of 3 essays. Now you have 40 minutes to complete your essay, but this time goes quite quickly. So again, make sure that you're aware of how much time you have left. So although it's not a direct test of your legal knowledge by any means, you should still do some preparation to make sure that you're as ready as you can be. This section of the video is about the resources that I used to prepare for the LNAT. Now, the only resource that I paid for was the Ultimate LNAT Guide from Amazon. It is relatively expensive at £26, but I think that it's absolutely worth it. There's 400 practice questions within it, and honestly, I don't think I even did 50% of them. There's just so many, there's so many questions for you to practice from. It was probably the most invaluable resource that I used in my preparation. It includes answers for all of the multiple choice questions with explanations. It includes annotated essays, and it includes a couple full mock papers at the end. And I don't know if they're still doing it, but when I got the book, they had an offer at the end of it where if you wrote them a review on Amazon, they would send you a free digital copy of any other study guide. So if you're also preparing for the Cambridge law test, then if you buy this book, you'll be able to get that one completely free. So really, it's a great deal. The LNAT website also has a few sample papers, and you should definitely use them because technically they're the only official papers. So you should use them to make sure that you absolutely know the format and the style of the questions that they may ask you. They also have one full mock test which happens on the computer, which is in exactly the same format as the real thing. So you should definitely use that and it will give you a real sense of what the real exam will be like. So if you can, get the Amazon guidebook and also use the sample papers on the LNAT website. Make sure to be disciplined when you're marking your answers so that you can learn from your mistakes and not make them again. When I started preparing, I was making loads of mistakes. And as they say, practice makes perfect. So don't feel demotivated if you're getting lower marks than what you think you should be getting. Now we can move on to section A, which is the multiple choice section. So section A is the multiple choice section, which has 42 questions based on 12 passages of information. And the main way that I revised for this section was using that big LNAT guidebook from Amazon because they have over 400 multiple choice questions and it's just there are just so many questions for you to practice with. Now, when you start practicing, timing isn't necessarily as important, so make sure that you read all the passages properly to give you the best chance of answering the question accurately. At this stage, it's best to understand the information in the passage rather than speed. But keep in mind that speed is important because you will, as you progress, have to go quicker with answering your questions. Obviously, you can do this on paper, but I used a Word document to put all the answers to the questions. Most of the time, I would do 3 to 4 passages before looking at the mark scheme to check if I'd got them right or not. I would then put a Y next to the answers that I got right and an N next to the answers that I got wrong, so that when I looked at the list of answers, I could see generally if I was doing okay or if I needed some improvement. And if the questions were particularly difficult, I would write a little note saying that I should revisit it in the future, and I would do it again and see if I'd improved from the first time that I tried it. Now, the LNAT is testing your verbal reasoning skills, which I don't think is something that anyone can teach in a quick video. But if you're convinced about studying law at university, then it's likely that you already have these skills. The difficulty is applying them specifically to this test. So I'll give you a few pointers about the multiple choice section. Firstly, don't forget that all the answers are within the passage. They're not asking for independent thought or your opinion in the multiple choice section. All you're being asked to do is analyze the information to come to a logical deduction. So often it isn't worth overthinking the questions, or you might get the facts all muddled up. Now, this leads on to remember to deal with only absolute facts within the passage. You have to ask yourself, is the writer making an assumption? Because the question could rely on the difference between an assumption and a fact within the passage. What I mean is, you have to be careful because it's likely that there'll be multiple answers that look as though they could be right, but you have to look for the nuances within the information. That being said, you must take all the information in the passage at face value, even if you think the information is wrong. The question will be based on the information in the passage being right. So don't choose your answer based on what you think the correct information should be. Next, for me, the best method was to read through the passage and then check the questions and then go back to the passage if I felt as though I needed any more information to come to my answers. Some people think it's best to read through the questions and then read the passage so you have an idea about what they're asking, but it's completely up to you. So I would say practice both methods and see which one feels better. Of course, the best way to improve your ability in the multiple choice section is just to practice as often as you can. Practicing will let you get to grips with how the questions are asked so that the wording doesn't throw you. As I mentioned, the LNAT guidebook from Amazon has 400 multiple choice questions. When I prepared, I only did 180, and I think that if I'd done more, I would have felt more relaxed when I went to do the LNAT. I would have just felt more comfortable. It would have been less stressful. So I wish that I had done more of the questions in the book. One of the most important things is timing. Once you have practiced and understood the format of the questions, you should move on to answering them as quickly as you can. It's definitely a skill to be able to quickly read a passage, extract the relevant information, and then answer the question accurately based on that information. So again, you should practice as much as you can and do it in time conditions if you feel prepared. Now, one of the most basic pieces of advice is to check that you clicked the right answer. I can't tell you how many times I was doing the practice papers online and I clicked the wrong one. And that's the worst feeling, is when you know you should have got the question right, but you just clicked on the wrong one. Complete accident. However, my advice is to pace yourself throughout the test and to check your answers as you go through rather than wait until the end to check them all. If you go back once you reach the end, you'll have to go through all the questions to find the ones that you skipped. Then you have to reread the passage and then finally check your answer. It's a lot of time. So although it may feel reassuring to go back over your answers, the best is to check throughout, because it's just too time consuming to wait till the end. Next, although it may not seem like it at first, there is always only one answer. So the best thing to do if you're not sure about the answer is to work backwards, to eliminate all the possibilities and then decide from what is left. Even if you're still not sure, eliminating all the impossibilities reduces the odds of you selecting the wrong answer. Speaking of not knowing answers, I hope this never happens, but as a last resort, you should always select an option. If there's one thing that you take away from this video, is that you should never leave a question blank. So finally, please read the other resources that I mentioned to get more tips and more advice. But for now, let's move on to section B. Now, section B is the essay question, which lasts for 40 minutes. It's different from section A because it isn't marked centrally and given a grade. Instead, your essay is sent to all the universities you apply to and their admissions tutors look at your essay individually, so you won't ever know the grade that you got in your essay. Now, that doesn't make the essay section less important. In fact, I'd say it makes it more important because the uni admissions tutors can see your writing skills under extreme time pressure. That being said, you do have 40 minutes, which is actually a decent amount of time to write a well-structured, persuasive essay. But remember, you don't have to fill the 40 minutes with frantic typing. In fact, often the best essays are a bit shorter but have more detail in each point that they mention. Speaking of the questions, please make sure that you spend enough time at the start to read each one carefully. You have a choice of 3. At first, one may seem the easiest, but this may not be the best option, especially if you find yourself running out of points to mention quite quickly. So definitely spend 3 to 5 minutes at the start to plan out your points, so that you don't run out as you start to write your essay and regret the question that you chose. But before we talk about the structure, I want to talk about how to actually prepare for the essay section. The first thing that I would do is to read about some common debate topics. My question was actually about euthanasia, which has to be one of the most commonly debated topics. So spend some time to read arguments for and against euthanasia, abortion, the purpose of social media, education, globalization, and climate change. Now, those are only a few possible basic debate topics, but there are lots of resources online with possible questions. One thing you can do is read the opinion posts of a good newspaper and see what you think about the topic that it talks about. It'll help you to develop possible arguments that you could bring into an essay. Now, there are lots of different essay structures that you can use to present your argument, and it'll help the admissions tutors to see how you specifically think. Now, the structure that I tended to use was a simple form of rhetoric writing. It starts with an introduction, then 2 points supporting my view, then 1 counter argument which I disprove to support my argument even more, and then finally a conclusion where I bring all my points together. You can even include relevant facts if you know any about the topic that you choose. You should also aim to have a flow argument by talking about how each point supports or argues against the previous one. Now, this may all seem a bit overwhelming at the moment, but take things slowly. See what works for you, and soon enough it'll all become part of your natural essay writing style. You should definitely do some sample papers with essay questions to see how you should best approach the essay section. You need to work out what essay structure you feel most comfortable with, and also the timings. I did every essay practice under time conditions to see how I performed under a time constraint, and I think that you should probably do the same. Also, again, please don't forget that the LNAT happens completely on the computer, which is obviously different to the pen and paper essay style that most of us are used to. There isn't any spell check or autocorrect, but those things are still important, so you should practice your essays under those conditions so that when you do the real thing, it isn't a shock to you. Typing speed and typing accuracy are 2 things that are very important for the LNAT. And that's the end of my advice for section B, the essay section. Finally, remember to have confidence in your ability to do well in the LNAT. If you're applying to study law at university level, then you probably already have reasonably developed verbal reasoning skills. So just make sure that you know exactly what to expect in the LNAT. I remember when I had to do it, and I know that you have a lot of things to do, but prepare as much as you can because it is an important part of applying to study law at university in the UK. Admissions tutors will consider your application as a whole, your personal statement and your grades, but they should be able to see your natural ability shine in the LNAT. You have to show them why you deserve a place at one of the best universities in the UK. Remember to wear something comfortable when you go to do the test, and make sure that you read carefully all the emails that they send you. I hope that this video helped you in some way to feel more comfortable about doing the LNAT. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like below and subscribe for more content.